So having looked at a bunion being the inflamed fluid-filled sac, the inflammation and swelling that forms on the outside of the first metatarsal joint there, we can now talk about the hallux abducto valgus, the deformity which tends to cause this bone here to stick out. A hallux abducto valgus is defined as when you have more than 15 degrees angle here at the first met head. The other angle that you need to be aware of here is the intermetatarsal angle. If you want to be pretentious, you can call it the primus metatarsus varus, but calling it the IM angle is fine. And this is the angle between the second metatarsal and the first metatarsal. And you don't have to be an orthopedic surgeon to work out the significance here. If this is sticking way out to the side, then the toe has almost got to drift that way. Otherwise, it's going to be sticking way out to the side. And having that high angle there is going to predispose to the pressure there. If this bone here is straight, then even if the big toe is bent over, you're much more likely to have that. So this is probably the more important angle, but this is the one that we tend to measure and classify HAV with. In terms of what causes it, and we don't like the word cause here because there isn't a direct cause. Saying what is the cause of HAV, it's a bit like saying what is the cause of depression. It's a complex multifactorial pathology, and if you try and nail it down to depression is caused by not working outside, or depression is caused by blood chemistry, or depression is caused by, I don't know, not having enough drugs in your life, then you inevitably reduce a complex multifactorial condition to something which it isn't. But we can talk about risk factors, and the way we do that is we take a big study like the Framingham foot study. What they did is they took a large population of about 3,000 people, and they gathered lots and lots and lots of data about their feet. So they looked at things like HAV angles, they looked at foot pain, they looked at foot type, they looked at body mass, gender, all this sort of thing. And what you can start to see from this is patterns of overlap. So one of the things they found is that it has a very high hereditability index. And what that means is hereditability is done on a scale of 0 to 1. So 0 means it's entirely phenotypic, which means that there is no genetic component to it whatsoever. A 1 would mean it was entirely genetic. It's entirely inherited from your parents. So you could call being a human being a hereditability of 1. Boris Johnson may confound that, but never mind. What we found here was that HAV had a hereditability of between 2.9 and 8.9, 0.29 and 0.89, which is pretty high. Put that in context, type 2 diabetes, which is generally considered to run in the family, has a hereditability index of 2.6. Your height has a hereditability index of something like between 0.68 and 0.93. So we can say that HAV is a very hereditable condition. There are a few other things that we found caused a big overlap, risk factors. These would be the IM angle. Naturally enough, if that is sticking out to the side, it's almost inevitable that that is going to bend that way. If you're wearing a shoe, otherwise it's just going to sort of stick out the side of your shoe. So there's a very high risk factor for IM angle. Having a longer first met, which again kind of makes sense intuitively. If you have a longer first met, you are more likely to have HAV. Being a woman makes you more likely to have HAV. Sorry, ladies, sucks to be you. And having a more rounded met head is another predictive factor, which is probably to do with how stable that joint is. Footwear, specifically history of footwear, was the interesting thing in that study. They didn't show that the shoes you were wearing now predicted it, but they did show that if you said you had worn high heels in the past, you were much more likely to get it. That may or may not account for the gender element, but it's certainly not irrelevant. The really interesting thing in this study was that there was no significant association found between hallux valgus and foot structure in men. However, cavus foot structure did show a protective association in women. So in other words, on the data that they had, and when you iron out the statistically insignificant stuff, they found that if you had a high arch foot, you were less likely to have it, but that the vice was not versa, that if you had a lower arch foot, you were not more likely to have it. Rather interestingly, that was not true when they looked at a combined thing of HAV with pain. If you had pain in your big toe joint, you were more likely to get that. So it might be that having a more pronated foot posture is a predictor for pain in the big toe joint, but not for the deformity itself. Which brings us on to the other thing, which is that HAV is a difference in shape. There is nothing in the definition of HAV which even implies pain. And we've all seen people who have a very, very, very large first met angle, but also a very good range of movement and no pain. And we've all seen people with a very low first met angle where there is an awful lot of pain. The conditions which cause pain in a big toe joint are more likely to be things like dorsal lipping, hallux limitus, hallux rigidus, that sort of thing. And they deserve their own video. But yeah, summing up on HAV, HAV is the angle at that joint there. It is most strongly predicted by the angle at that joint there. If you have a high IM angle, you're much more likely to have it. And the risk factors, bearing in mind that we cannot say these are causes, these are only risk factors, are IM angle, long first met, gender, being female, the shape of the met head, and the footwear. We cannot say, based on the evidence, that having a more pronated foot type predicts that you will have HAV, and if it doesn't predict it, if there's no association, then it's not reasonable to assume that it could be a cause. So I hope you found that helpful, and we'll try and do the painful first met conditions another day.